Hello everybody, my name is Cool, but I'm bringing out this video of me talking about some technology things, and as you guys know, I like to have background music, so I'm going to turn on the background music. But not to vary the lead too far, and you can probably see from the title of the video here, this video is going to be covering the updated version of my streaming box here. So, ooh, that is very loud. Okay, I need that to calm down. Sorry, my apologies. But this is going to be an update of my streaming box that I have here. I built a streaming box back in 2021, May of 2021, and that box video has done pretty okay for me, and that's pretty cool. But I just mostly was proud of the box that I built back in those times. So I built an updated version of the box because my friend wanted me to build a box for them, for him, and I built a box for him, and I decided to upgrade my own. So without barely too much, this box is an updated version. It's essentially the same components as the previous one, and I'll link my video here so you can go watch that. But I do want to show just really fast, just kind of a clip that I have recorded from the recent past of the previous box, because of course the previous box no longer exists because this one now exists. But that clip is going to show essentially just what the box's state was. So apologies for the messy background in the room. This is just the box where it lived. And the primary things that you'll see inside of this video is that this is just the box as it was. So if you go back and watch that video from 2021 and come in and watch this little clip here, this little looping clip, you'll see that the box basically just sat in one spot. It kind of grew because I added stuff and I took away stuff. So it just kind of evolved over time and ended up being kind of a veritable rat's nest of stuff. But the primary thing to point out in this particular box, and again, apologies for the little herky-jerkiness of the loop, is that we have the ATEM Mini right there that I'm holding in my hand. Under there, we got the power cords and all the other stuff, and just a bunch of things that just ended up in the box. We have some cabling there for a power over Ethernet switch, and then we have a monitor and some other stuff. So I'm not going to spend too much time staring at that because we're not going to get a ton of extra information for that, besides the fact that that particular corner of the room is pretty messy. But going back to the current box that we have here, this box has been essentially cleaned up, spruced up. I've taken out things that I didn't use, and I put in some things that I might use a little bit more, and kind of added myself a few little quality of life improvements. And I'm going to start with a tour of the box on the outside, and please feel free to use the timestamp at the bottom to skip to the sections of the video that you're most interested in. I'll try to keep things a little bit more procedural from part to part. But the main thing is that the tour of the box we have here, the top of the box. I'll open this up here in a second. But I'm going to switch over to my other camera that I have temporarily set up here. Just kind of shows some of the sides, more specifically the plates here. So apologies for the not ideal lighting here, but just trying to make sure I got an angle that you can actually see instead of just the overhead one. But you can see right here we have the plates, and these plates are going to be Keystone plates that you essentially can use for low voltage wiring on your own if you want to, or you can, if you have somebody install like an Ethernet cable into your house or entertainment system setup, they'll usually use something like this. And what these allow me to do is these allow me to essentially inside the box have all the wires running to wherever they need to run to, connect to it whatever they need to connect to, and then output here. So in this case, I have the HDMI's 1 through 4 from my ATEM Mini connect through here. I have the HDMI outs here, and you'll know that the ATEM Mini Pro that I have only has one HDMI out. I'll talk about why there's two here a little bit later. Over here we have the aux, or the audios, so the audio in 1, audio in 2. That allows me to get audio into it, and notice that I try to keep those as far away as possible from everything else to reduce the chance or the amount of interference that could possibly happen. And then of course over here we have the we have Ethernet ports. This one here is for the internet, this one's here is for the network, so I can connect to my house network, plug an Ethernet jack into there, and then I can connect into the router that I have installed in here. And that allows me to do streaming and everything. I have a network set up for my ATEM setup, and we'll talk about more of that when the box is open. And these 3 ports here, these connect to a power over Ethernet switch that's inside of there. Again, we'll talk about that more as we get inside the box. But that allows me to power my PTZ cameras, which are power over Ethernet compatible, so I can power them over Ethernet and do all kinds of fun stuff, which I don't do. I just use it for simplifying my cable management, really. And then finally, we have a USB port. This USB port is used to connect in my controller that I use to control my stream, to allow me to do some macros and some other fun stuff using Bitfocus Companion. And of course, we'll talk more about that as we get inside the box. But for right now, that's just going to be this side of the box. The other sides of the box, this one just has some screw holes on the outside. I tried to reduce the amount of drilling into or cutting into the side of the box that I could possibly do, but this is just holding onto a cheese plate that's on the inside that allows me to connect a monitor arm, which we'll talk about that once we open the box. And then everything else is kind of open and clean, as in there's nothing on the other sides. Again, probably not the most ideal angle to see it. And this is a Plano box. This one cost me about $15, the box itself. But the overall build, if you're wondering about the price and the value of the build, not including the ATEM or the monitor that's inside of there, or the Stream Deck that I use to control everything, this box runs about $500, and that's for the parts that I used. You can definitely cheapen the box by a lot by removing some components, by not using exactly what I used, but I'll explain what I used and why I used it as we go along. So let me go ahead and switch back over to our overhead view, and I might adjust our camera so we can get another angle here. But opening up the box, these are just two latches to hold into the box, and it's not the same hinge approach that I had in the previous box, so I don't really have a way to kind of mount a monitor to the top of the lid or mount the router, so I kind of missed out a little bit, but I found some ways around that, which we'll look at here in a second. So I'm just going to move the top. The way I designed this box, and I'll explain a little bit more what's going on here in a second, but we have the ATEM switcher here. We have the monitor that's connected to the monitor arm, as I mentioned before. And the way I designed the box originally was to design it to where I can use the box top to put it like this. And I originally wanted to make the monitor either connected to this, so I can wire it into the ATEM, or make it to where I can kind of set the monitor on top of this and use this as a table surface. Let me adjust my other camera here so we can kind of see a little bit better representation of what's going on there. But the idea behind that is that that would have given me the ability to hopefully, use that for like an extra surface and kind of store more things and have more things. And apologies, you're gonna see a little bit of my room in the background, but I've adjusted my camera, so let me go and switch back over. And we see here just kind of the little tabletop surface that forms. Then I can kind of put something here to kind of make this more of a flat surface instead of the graded surface that we have there. And ultimately the idea was that I would be able to kind of control the switcher from here and then put stuff up there. But the reality is, especially the way I use my ATEM, the reality is that most of my controls are done from the Stream Deck anyway. And I'll show here, because I have a different setup. I'm using my friend's setup to actually record this. But this is the Stream Deck that I'll use. This will be plugged into the box through the USB Type A that's over there. And all my controls are here, so I really don't need to access this directly. I rarely need to actually access my ATEM directly. And that's one of the big changes that you'll see between this box and the other box. But let's go and get back to our overhead view, and I'll continue on. So as I was saying before, there is the ATEM here. This is pretty much bog standard. To the other build, we essentially have all of our connections here. And I will move this monitor out of the way. There we go. So there we go. We can adjust that out of the way. It's on a magic arm that's connected to a cheese plate, and I'll get a better angle of that in the other camera here shortly. But going back into the ATEM, you can see the ATEM has all the connections that we have that we would need. And oh my gosh, that is so blurry. Sorry, let me change our focus here. Clearly, I was not focused on the right thing. 1 second. There we go. That's much better. Sorry. I'm glad I checked. I'm glad I checked my camera there. But as far as everything goes, you can see the ATEM, we have it here. We have the connections inside of it. Just pretty much the aux 1, aux 2, all 4 HDMIs, the HDMI out, the USB-C that I have connected to a storage drive that's somewhere down in there. I'll pull it out in a second. And then we have the Ethernet that's connected over to the router. This is the travel router that's here. As you can see, it's kind of it's connected by command strips. It's not the fanciest thing in the world. And, oop, there you go, exposing my password to the world, but it's fine. But as far as everything goes, this is the router. It has the Ethernet cables connected to it to get to the switch that's down there. And there's a switch under there, and I'll get to that in a second. But going back to the ATEM, this is the heart of the machine. All these cables are connected through this little bit cable managed situation here to the front. To where you can kind of see this, and let's see. I just want to see if there's a better angle for my other camera. It looks like there is slightly. I just got to adjust my light. 1 second. Doing things live is always dangerous, I'm telling you. Yeah, that didn't help at all. All right, let's see if I can adjust the brightness here. Maybe that might help. Is that the color? No, it's the brightness. Nope, that was a color. Oh wow, nothing's changing. Interesting. All right, sorry, 1 second. Clearly I've set up this setup before. 1 second, let me try to adjust the light. But while I'm waiting for me to kind of get through my technical difficulties here, the thing I was referring to is that essentially all these are connected in through the plate on the front. And there we go, got some more brightness going. And sorry for the lighting change, the color change, I mean. And we'll switch over to the other camera. So this is the view that I was trying to show. Again, apologies for the background that's a little bit messy back there. But you can kind of see that these are all just connected in. And these are using the plates that you would use for a low voltage. I kind of modified them slightly. But those plates allowed me to get some metal reinforcement back here. And so instead of just drilling in the plates, the front plates into the plastic, it's essentially going into the plates and then another metal piece and then the plastic and then another metal piece. So that just made me feel a little bit better kind of putting it together that way. I can see over here the audio is coming around the side here, and then it's connecting into there. But for the most part, I just want to show that part that's there. Oh, there's my storage drive. It's just hanging in there. And yeah, this is the Ethernet connected in there. And we'll switch back over to the overtop view, and let me lower my lights so it's not blinding us. There we go. Whew. Again, doing things live is always dangerous, isn't it? All right, so going back into what we were discussing, we were talking about the ATEM, all the connections. I did mention before that I have a monitor that's connected to a cheese plate. So that cheese plate can be seen over here on the side. It's just drilled into the side, held onto by just screws and bolts. That allows me to connect the monitor arm to the side, and that allows me to have this monitor. So this monitor is not entirely useful. I don't always need it because I have an HDMI out. But in this particular use case, this gives me the flexibility and the ability to just use this box kind of in the field if I ever need to travel a lot, which I don't ever have to travel, but my friend will have to travel, so his needs were much different than mine. But I wanted to get that travel ability, and that is why I want to include a monitor inside of here. So I have the ability to monitor things, do the whole production from this monitor alone, in conjunction with the Stream Deck. And speaking of the Stream Deck, that is connected down here into this Raspberry Pi, which you can see it down there, right over there. And that Raspberry Pi allows me to have the Bitfocus companion software. And that Bitfocus companion software can be run on Raspberry Pi. And that allows me to control my ATEM, make different macros, and I've been using it for years. So I kind of built out my own custom setup over time. But it essentially gives me the ability to kind of, put my screen fade to black, mute my audio, and then hit a button, and then it starts recording, it unfades, and then it just kind of keeps going. I hit a button, just cuts my audio, hit another button, and kind of switches over scenes. So just gives me some flexibility to do a lot of cool things, a lot of management. And that means that I need less computer, which is my goal. I want to be able to take this without having to use a computer, and that Bitfocus companion controller is priceless. It's worth its weight in gold. And by that I mean as a free software that exists that you just need to install on something like your Windows computer or your Mac computer, or in my case, a Raspberry Pi. It is totally worth it, revolutionized how I do my streaming, simplified my life greatly. So I do appreciate it greatly. But that's down there, and it's sitting on top of a switch. And this is before I mentioned the power over Ethernet switch. So this is a PoE switch, and I can't get a better angle, can I? Nope, not really. This monitor arm is in the way. But it's basically over top of a PoE switch, and that power over Ethernet switch allows me to power things. I do have in my friend's build, because I mentioned that I did my friend's build before I rebuilt mine. In my friend's build, I do have their Raspberry Pi with a power over Ethernet hat, because they have the virtually same configuration, except for they have a RodeCaster video instead of a ATEM Mini, so they got the fancy one. But the power over Ethernet switch allows me to power my PTZ cameras, so it simplifies my cabling. I can theoretically use those PTZ cameras and feed the video into my ATEM. It's a lot more difficult to ATEM because I have to technically go through a computer to do that. But with the RodeCaster video, which is what my friend has, the RodeCaster video allows him to just feed that NDI feed directly into the RodeCaster Video, and that's pretty neat. So if you do have a RodeCaster Video or the RodeCaster Video S, which has been announced, but I haven't seen it on sale yet at this time, currently in early November 2025. But if you do have that, you have the ability to kind of simplify your cabling a little bit. So maybe you don't need as many cables if you decide to build something similar to this. But going back to the power of Ethernet, it's very useful. Like I said before, his Raspberry Pi is powered because it has a PoE hat. So it is powered by the switch, so it simplifies the cabling. So he essentially has two cables, the Ethernet cable connected to the switch, and then the USB cable connected to the front. I could also theoretically run another USB cable to the front so I can get access to the Raspberry Pi over USB. I can even connect the HDMI output from the Raspberry Pi into the ATEM or into the switcher and use that for other things like, I think there's a software to where you can essentially do hyperdeck things. I used to have that, but I got rid of it because I never used it. But essentially allows you to kind of run video clips similar to how I did here. I just used the RodeCaster Video's built-in thing to do that at the top of the video. But anyway, that's not the important part. The important part is that gives me a lot of flexibility. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of versatility, and I can power different things. It's also a 5-port switch, so I could put in a bigger switch if I needed to. You can see here that there's plenty of room in there to fit maybe up to, I think if you put anything bigger than a 12-port switch, you might be pushing it. You could probably fit a 24 in there if you really, really wanted to, but at that point you might need a rack setup. That's just my whole thing. Anyway, so that's talking about the switch, let's talk about the Raspberry Pi, let's talk about the monitor. So going back over here to the audio, I do have the audio set up in this particular configuration to where it's connected through just some audio cables. I'm trying my hardest to reduce the noise. It's very difficult. I'm nowhere near audio engineer myself, so I'm just kind of doing stuff by trial and error. And through trial and error, I found that if I use ground loop interrupts or ground loop isolators, I think is what's called. If I just use some cheap ones here, connect into that, that helps reduce a lot of the noise and feedback that I get. But I have those connected in here permanently, so that way when I connect a 3.5 millimeter jack on the outside into the box, that allows me to have a little bit cleaner signal. It's not a perfect solution. It's actually very far from a perfect solution because ideally I would rather have the audio in a completely separate box, but I'm working with what I got here. So got to take the losses where the losses happen. Continuing on inside the box, inside this variable rat's nest, because mine is not nearly as organized and neat as I made my friends. I have a USB hub down here. The hub is not needed, but the powered USB hub has been useful because in the past I had a few more accessories. I had like a switcher, not a switcher, I don't know what's it called. It's not a splitter. Essentially a thing I can hit a button and it'll change the HDMI source from one cable that's connected to it to another. So I had that connected and that needed USB power. I had a USB hub connected to the USB hub so I can actually get access to things on the Raspberry Pi, and that was all connected to the Raspberry Pi. I had a whole bunch of things that I didn't use and didn't need, so I took them out. It simplified my life. But I did use the power USB hub to power the router, because that is a travel router. It's a iNet, GLI net travel router. And it worked perfectly. It works fine for powering the router. It also gives me the ability to power other things, which I recently had a situation to where I needed to power something and I was able to just use the power that's inside of here. And that helped me accomplish what I was trying to accomplish. So that is that part. Moving on to the other bits of the box. Pretty much the last bit that I'll talk about before I just kind of go back and get some more overview. Last two bits. Sorry, I mentioned I was going to talk about this before. So I'll talk about it now. So this here, this here is kind of caught up in the cables. This here is a HDMI duplicator. Pretty cheap to get, like maybe $20. You can get a better quality one if you really wanted to. But this allows me to essentially take my single HDMI out that my ATEM has, feed it into here, and that allows me to connect over to my monitor, which is very useful. And then also allows me to get an HDMI out here. Now I mentioned before that there's a reason why there's two HDMI outs on my box instead of one, because I really only need one. The reason why there's two is because I thought about getting the Raspberry Pi out into here, but really I don't use the Raspberry Pi that way. I just use it for a Bitfocus companion. I don't even have a GUI on it. I don't really have a graphical user interface on it. So there's no desktop on it. It's just running headless So it has command line prompts. I can deal with that. I'm used to dealing with that, but it's all networked together, so I can get into the Raspberry Pi through SSH and all the other means that I would need to. So that goes a long way to say that the second HDMI is not used. So I could replace it with something else, like maybe the USB-A, but I have not made that final decision here. So it's actually not populated down here. If you look, yeah, this one's not populated here on the left. So that is that. But this is really useful because it allows me to still use the monitor, and I can use a cheaper monitor. This particular monitor, unfortunately, I got it later. This monitor, unfortunately, has an HDMI in and out. And I say unfortunately because it means that I didn't really need to spend that extra $20, $30 for the duplicator, but I already had it. It was my solution before. I just stuck with it, threw it in the box because you never know. Maybe I need to have, you know, 2 signals come here, or maybe I need 1 signal to go from my monitor, 1 signal to go from there. I don't know. Whatever it is, I have flexibility to do different things, and it lets me solve problems on the fly. And that's the main draw for me in a lot of these boxes that I build. And by a lot of these boxes, I mean literally this is my 3rd streaming box if I count my friends. But I have built other boxes like the audio boxes, the podcasting boxes. So I guess technically this is the thing I do. There you go. Anyway, moving on. The last bit is the power cord. So the power cord. Oh, well, I talked about the router earlier, didn't I? Yeah, okay, it's fine. All right, I think I talked about the router, but just in case I didn't, the router already had it lying around. It allows me to connect to the internet. It allows me to network everything. It gives me the ability to connect to Wi-Fi and connect to the internet. So it's a router. I don't really know what else to say except for it's a travel router. It's small. I had it lying around, so I just used it. So you can use a different router, a bigger router, more powerful, more capable router, but this one has gigabit Ethernet. That's good enough for this box. I'm not gonna be doing anything that needs 2.5 or anything higher than that. So, you know, I'm not throwing fiber in this box because what do I need that for? All right, so the last thing finally is going to be talking about the power strip that's in there. So the power strip that's in there is actually a power conditioner. And this is something that I learned through reading through forums, through facing my own issues with audio. But a power conditioner is different from a power supply or a power strip, I should say. And a power strip essentially doesn't have, I guess, contingencies to deal with sensitive audio equipment, whereas a power conditioner does have that. So that is something that I learned, like I said, over time. It's the same power conditioner that I had the previous one, but I essentially have it in the box, and it's gonna be hard to visually see it because one, there's no light and it's kind of under the platform, but essentially I have it stuck to the back wall. So this is the power conditioner, and I have it like that stuck to the back wall. Through using command strips, so reducing the amount of screws that I have to put into the box. But the reason why I have it that way is so that I can kind of plug everything in. It gives me space for like larger bricks, like the ATEM Mini Pro's power brick is pretty large. The power brick for the Power Ethernet switch is pretty large, relatively speaking. So it gives me some space and time. Space and time. It gives me some space to actually put those things inside the box and have, you know, a little bit of wiggle room. And that is one of the benefits of having it kind of taped to the wall. Also, it allowed me to do the cable out of the box. And I'll switch back over to my other camera view. Actually, let me adjust it again, 1 second. This will take me a second. But I routed the cable outside of the box. And by routing the cable outside of the box, that allows me to, again, keep things closed. I probably would not run this completely closed because I might have some issues with ventilation. But I could very easily just kind of drill a hole into the side like I did in my previous box and put a fan. That allows me to kind of get some airflow coming in and get that going through. And let's switch over. And as you can see right here, this is what I was referring to. This is just the same thing that you would use if you have a desk that has cables coming through it for cable management. Just basically drilled a hole the right size, slapped that plate in there, glued it, and then I threw this little cap that it came with, and that kind of makes it nice and clean looking. It's sturdy enough. The reason I'm saying that is because I was a little bit concerned about the material here for this Plano box. This is a $15 box, if I haven't mentioned that. But this is sturdy enough. I'm not like throwing around, tossing around. I would probably not stack things on top of this box, especially with all the components inside of it. Because if I add in, going back to overhead view, if I add up the total of this box, not including the Stream Deck that I would use on the outside, and the total of this box is definitely hitting in the $700, $800 range, because the box itself is roughly $500, and it sounds like a lot, It kind of is, but things add up once you start getting the cables and once you start getting the cheese plates and, you know, the power conditioner and the switch. But essentially, adding things up came out to about $500, give or take 100, so maybe $400-ish. And when you add the ATEM, which I think this is running for $250 nowadays, 300, and then you add in the monitor, which itself, at the time I got it was 200, maybe you can get it slightly cheaper, you're looking at paying a reasonable amount of money. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world. It is definitely cheaper than some of the more turnkey solutions that exist with less features. Again, you won't have the Raspberry Pi that's inside the box. And you also won't have, I guess really that's it. The only benefit is the Raspberry Pi really. I guess you won't have the router built into it. I don't know. Take that however you will. But what I'm trying to say is that with a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of creativity, you can take some scrap parts lying around and build your own box. I like the way that this box turned out because it does give me the ability to easily put away and travel with things. It keeps things nice and in the same area. So when I do want to stream, I can just kind of plug in my stuff through the front here. Oops. I can plug in my stuff through the front here, run my wires, run my cables, and that allows me to kind of get the video going. And I kept mentioning before that my friend has a box that I built for them. So let me show that box if I can without breaking anything. All right, here I am breaking stuff. 1 second. All right, we don't have enough light over there, so I'm gonna turn my light on. 1 second. Ooh, okay, that is not stable. All right, 1 moment. I decided to do this on the fly for some reason instead of planning for it ahead of time, like a responsible adult. There we go. So I'm just gonna move this light. And is that throwing enough light? It's good enough. Okay. All right. Let me adjust the camera one more time here, and then I'll switch my camera over to my the one that I'm actually recording on. Normally I would live stream while I'm recording, but I'm re-recording this video because I wasn't happy with the way the previous video showed up. So we are not live right now, but I do live stream on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/coolblue. And my friend, he live streams on his channel too. So feel free to check us out. You'll hear me plug that all the time. Actually, let me just keep that there for a second. And okay, all right, prepared. We are prepared. So I'm gonna switch over to the other camera angle and we're gonna talk about what we're looking at here. So what we're looking at here is very dark. So my apologies, I'll try to get my light over there so we can see. What we're looking at here is we're looking at his build. And this is the top, I mentioned before, kind of a little tabletop situation. It makes a little bit more sense with the RodeCaster video because the RodeCaster video has a lot more capabilities built in that allows, that allows you to kind of do some really fun, neat stuff. And again, I'm trying to get the light to not be too harsh, but there we go. That's good enough. And if I take off the top here, I just move it out of the way, you'll see that inside the box, it's a lot, well, yeah, it's a lot cleaner looking than my box, mainly because I didn't want to leave my friend with something messy looking like mine's was. So it's a lot cleaner looking. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm not gonna move it because it's currently recording the video that we're on. But you can see I got the same audio idea. The audio cable's running. It has more audio cables for the RodeCaster video. I have all the HDMIs that are all pulled out there. And ooh, let me zoom in. Ooh, that sounded rough. Do I have this on manual? Why do I have this on manual? Clearly I use this camera all the time. There we go. So we have the HDMIs coming out the back there. We have his Keystone connectors there in the front. We have things a lot better cable managed. His Raspberry Pi is right there in the middle. Again, I'm not gonna move it, so we're just gonna have to trust me on that one. And yeah, his looks a lot more neat. He has his router over there and all that fun stuff. So that is essentially the build. Like I mentioned before, I built his because he wanted one to be built, but he had a little bit more budget, so he got a RodeCaster video, so he got the benefit from that. And I decided to rebuild mine, which is mine, which is using currently, oh gosh, the light's bright, which is currently using an ATEM Mini. But you can pretty much throw whatever controller you want in here. The concept of the box is essentially you have a box, a platform, and then you just kind of, you know, cut out spots where you want to put stuff in. That's really the entire concept of the box. And as long as you have that, you can pretty much do whatever you want with the box. You can add stuff, you can take out stuff. You can even put a Windows PC inside of here if you get something like an Intel NUC. I think at that point, it might be a good idea to like cut a hole on the side and add some fans for ventilation. And yeah, the world's your oyster really with these kind of boxes. Oh, I forgot to talk about these. There's switches here for power. So the ATEM Mini famously does not have a built-in power switch. And as a result, when it's plugged in, it's powered on. So I have these two switches here. One is for the ATEM Mini, one is for the monitor. So I can kind of turn them off and turn them on by turning off and turning on the power. It required a little bit of wiring, but it wasn't that complicated to do. So yeah, I was able to accomplish that. And I was able to preserve the original ATEM plug. I did not cut into the original ATEM plug. I plugged it into a socket. What's the proper word? Yeah, I was gonna say socket. I plugged into a socket that allowed me to just basically do the wiring from there. So the ATEM Mini plug that it plugs into here, I have a piece that's like a wire that I can connect it into, like a breakaway cable, if you will. And I basically cut that up and I wired it and kind of did my little situation here. I'll probably end up getting a RodeCaster video myself sometime in the future, just not right now because I don't need to. You know, this is sufficient for me. This does what I need to do. And yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it. This is the entire box. Let me go ahead and put it back together here so we can close it up. But the idea, like I said, behind the box is that it allows me to be travelable. Do I travel with my box? No. But my friend, his needs are very different. He will be traveling from venue to venue to do recording for different things, various shows, various D&D stuff is what he does, because I do board game things, he does D&D stuff. So he'll have a lot of fun with that, and I'll be working with him to do all the production stuff. And that is essentially the entire box. You can, like I said, I don't think I said it before, but I'll say it now if I didn't. You can technically run this closed. If you are gonna run it closed, I would highly recommend putting a fan, because it does get a little toasty in there. Not like super hot and, you know, catch on fire hot, but it does get a little toasty in there. So I would recommend just kind of drilling a hole in the side and putting the fan in there. But otherwise, that is the entire box. And I'll try to put some of the parts in the description. A lot of the parts that I have in this box are very similar to my previous build. And my friend's build is a different beast. I'm not gonna put a parts list for that one. We'll probably do a video separate one day for his box to talk about production and cost and all this stuff. But the main thing is that if you do want to build your own box, I would highly encourage it. It took me about maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks or so. No, 3 weeks total with ordering parts and kind of fitting things in to build my friend's box and kind of conceptualize that idea. And then it took me a single day to build mine because one, I had some parts left over from his, things like extra plates for the Keystone plates. And then two, I kind of knew what I needed. So I can go straight to the hardware store, pick up the pieces I needed for the boxes. And then already had cables because my previous build had all the wiring that I needed for my ATEM to work. And yeah, it just worked out. I was able to build mine in a day. Whereas his, it took me about 3 weeks to kind of figure out everything and get stuff where I needed to. And then hopefully for you, if you decide to build one, you can just kind of order the pieces you need and then build yours in a day too. I don't know. I'm hopeful that this will help people build their own boxes, especially with the age of affordable streamability. You know, everybody has a podcast, everybody has a YouTube channel these days, and I love it. I like seeing more creative things out there. I like seeing people create, and I like having portability. And also, it's clean. If I need to clean up everything, I just kind of put stuff back in the box, move it, and it's out of the way. What more could you want, right? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close up the video there. So hopefully this video was informative. Hopefully this video was useful. Maybe this video might encourage you to build your own portable box, maybe something way fancier. You could even use like a Pelican case if you really wanted to. Maybe just like a giant tub. Ammo cases or gun cases are really good candidates for boxes like this if you want to use a different box. The general idea of this one is just have the Keystone plates so we can have everything connected on the outside while everything on the inside stays where it's at. That is the main approach that I took in trying to build this box, and hopefully that'll help you. That idea can help you build your box if you want to build your own, or you can spend money to have a bespoke box created for yourself. I don't know, it's your money, live your life. All right, well, thank you all very much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, I will see y'all whenever.